Yeah. Masakit ulo po. Biogesic. Ingat. Anyway, so we'll start na. This is it. So welcome for the first workshop uh in this year, 2023. So round of applause. And um let's start it with an actual Google product. Finally, San Carlos had a workshop for a Google product, di ba? Finally. So it's of course Firebase. So you might be thinking that what is Firebase? I've heard of Firebase. So is it like database, di ba? Base, database, di ba? That seems logical. Yeah, it's a database, but it's a lot more than that, actually. So Firebase is a cloud service that offers backend as a service. So remember the term backend as a service. So it's an entire backend architecture at your fingertips, guys. So you do not have basically, di ba? That's the shortcut. It's BAS. Okay. Um, so as a developer, you'll do the front end. Di ba? Normally, you do the front end, and then for the back end, you'll have to set up a server. You'd have to connect both of them and resolve course errors. You set up a proxy, and then you'll handle your own authentication flow and all that kind of jazz. But here is Firebase. Firebase handles database management, cloud storage, authentication. Now you might think now authentication is quite easy, but it's not. It's complicated as hell. Okay. Yeah, login, password. Nah, it's more than that, guys. There's a lot happening behind the scenes, and Firebase can easily handle that for you. You can also host your web apps using Firebase. But it's very convenient. Okay, so it's fire, it's lit, di ba? you know, you remember this meme, guys. Pero there's actually one problem, no? For today's workshop, we'll be using vanilla JS or pure JS. Pero your browser can only interpret a single JavaScript file. Okay? So the problem with that is when you have multiple script files, it won't. So, di ba, what are you going to do if you have multiple script files? And you can't just bundle all your code in one JavaScript file. So here comes Webpack. So before we start, let's install Webpack. And so basically, Webpack is a module bundler, and its main purpose is to bundle JavaScript files for usage in a browser. It's a very I don't need to explain it, so it just bundles your JavaScript up for your browser to understand it. And it's not just JavaScript. You could bundle up images so that they'll be a lot less heavy. Even HTML files, CSS files, your styling, everything. So before we do that, so you'd have Webpack. So this is their. Is my screen clear? Okay. So to start, let's actually create a new project. Diba? Fresh start, nothing, even a new folder. Um, projects. Let's call it Firebase demo. Diba? And let's open it in VS Code. So before this, you need to have also Node installed. So to check if you have installed Node, go to your terminal, type node dash dash version, and if the version appears, you've successfully installed Node. You'd also need to have npm. Npm is together with Node, so if you install Node, you'd also have npm. Okay, so Need to find that file, that folder rather. Okay. So first, we'll create a source folder, diba? Seems easy. Then a script file. Let's call it index.js. Okay. And let's type hello. So let's log to the console lang. Hello world, diba? Hello world. Okay. Next, we're going to create our distribution folder. So let's call it dist. So this is where your bundled JavaScript will go. Okay. And let's create here a basic HTML. We're only bundling JavaScript for this. No, we're planning to create just a single HTML file, single style file para hindi masyadong nakakakilabot. So let's type in that. So if you didn't know, VS Code has emmet. So you just type an exclamation mark, hit enter, magic. Diba? Let's replace this with Firebase workshop. Then simple h1 hello. Diba? Okay, so now here comes the fun part. You open a terminal and first you initialize a package.json file. So you do that by typing npm init-y. Okay. So npm init-y. So here you have a package.json. So your package.json is where your program will look for the dependencies it needs to be installed. Okay. So basically, when writing web apps, you're not just dependent on your JavaScript. You'd also need to have external dependencies, and your package.json is basically like a documentation for that. And even your scripts, okay? We'll talk about that later. Next, we're going to install Webpack. So npm I Webpack, and together with the Webpack CLI. So this is Webpack space webpack dash CLI, and then space dash capital D, the D. Hit enter. So the dash D here is a flag that tells your um, function or your command rather na it should be a development dependency. So dev dependency only. Okay, so this will take time. But guys, happy advance Valentine's Day. Okay, so now that we've installed Webpack, so let's add a git ignore. Git ignore. So dot git ignore with no spaces. And then let's not include node modules because that's large. That file, it contains all the files that's needed in your dependency, and that's like 100 gigabytes of files. So don't include that when you're pushing to the repository. And then we're going to create in the root of your folder, we're going to create, no, not a folder, but rather a file called webpack.config.js. So this is where we are going to store our Webpack configuration. So how do we tell Webpack where to look? And how do we tell Webpack where to output the bundled JavaScript code? This is where you're telling Webpack that. I'm going to copy paste the code, and I'll just also paste it here in the chat box so if everyone can see that. So I'll explain it. So let's start with the module that exports. So you're basically exporting a module which is an object, and then for the mode you'd have to specify that it's development, and then here's the part. So basically this is where the entry point is where you tell Webpack where to look. In this case, we're telling Webpack to look at our src index.js. And mind you, this is a relative relative path. So place a dot here. So dot slash src slash index.js. Now, how do we tell Webpack where to output the bundled file? Output is where you tell Webpack that. So it contains a path, and then so path here is an external module. This is why we also need node, and then path dot resolve, and then it takes the current directory, and then the folder that you want. So this is now in absolute path. So absolute path, relative path. This is relative. This is in absolute, and then the file name should be bundle.js. Okay. So of course, you can always copy this on the internet, and it's don't memorize it, guys. If you can look it up, don't memorize it. Okay. Um, and then you set watch to true so that it always watches the index.js file for any changes. And when any change happens, it will bundle the file. Okay. Now, how do we write a script? We'll go back to the package.json, and then we're going to add a script, a new script called build. And we're going to tell Webpack, I mean, joke. We're going to tell our program basically, now when we call build, we mean to call Webpack. So why do we do that? Why can't we just call Webpack? Okay, so when you're in the industry, guys, and you're given a project, you're going to clone that project, and then the first thing you'll do is to read the documentation and look at this package.json, because here in the scripts, this is where you can see how to run the application. So these are basically the commands that you need to run your application. So when I'm going, if I have no idea, I look at this and I'll say na, oh, I'll have to run build, so I'll run Webpack. So it's not from the top of the head na, this project uses Webpack, might as well use that too. So it's not. Now that we have that, let's run it. Diba? Okay, so npm run build as we've specified. So save this paranoid moments. Enter. Okay, so now that we've bundled the file, let's go to our index.html and actually add a script tag. Okay, so we're going to call it bundle.js and close that script and run it on our live server. So live server, go to your extensions, search for live server and install it, and you can run it from there. Okay, okay, diba? So hello, and if we inspect and also go to our console here, sorry for that error. Here we have our hello world from the index.js. So now that we can verify that our bundle is successful, let's start setting up Firebase. Now, when you set up Firebase, you type Firebase, of course. And this brings you to this page. And you you create an account, or you can sign in with your Google account, and then you'd go to the console. Okay, so in my case, I'm going to sign in with my personal email. Diba? And then go to console. So here is the setup. Okay, Motel Magic, my best project. Okay, it's not my best project, guys. No, it's like this is like the catalyst for me being here. This was the project that brought me here, basically. Okay, so let's create a new project. Let's name it Firebase demo. Um, so this is just a sample. We're going to use another kind of data. So this is just to create something new, but we've already created and prepared. So it's just the same thing, just a different name that we'll use later. So Firebase demo, do not enable this, and then create project. Okay, well, very easy. It's all in the UI. You do not have to type any kind of gibberish that um it's it's quite difficult to really set up a backend. Okay, so continue. Now that we're here, we're going to set up a web application. Okay, so how do they do that? Once you're here in your home, click this. You could even do iOS or Android, even Unity and Flutter, but we're going to go with web. And then Firebase demo again. Do not check this, but if you want hosting, you can always set it up later. And then register app. Okay. Okay. So now continue to we're going to go back to this later, but for now let's continue to console. So now your application is registered, and as you can see, it's here. And you're in the Spark plan, which is the free plan. Yay. No payments. Now let's go to Firestore database, which is the actual database. And here, let's also set it up. So as you can see, guys, build, you'd have authentication, real-time databases, storage, hosting, machine learning. Damn, son. Um, so create database, and then lag one. Okay, so let's start in test mode. Okay, but you can always promote it to production when you want your friend, your crush, your teacher to see it. So go with that. The next. And then, since we're in our beloved country, Philippines, let's choose Southeast Singapore and enable. So be careful in choosing the region. You cannot change this. Okay. You have to fully commit, guys. Cannot enable Firestore for this project after. What? Why is it not working? Jakarta. Gosh. Sorry. Why is it not working? Um, Good thing we have a backup for this. Okay, so basically, we're going to resolve this error later, but we're we're in the nick of time. So we're going to go with another project lang. Pero when you set that up, you're going to have, let me just go here. Okay, so once you set it up and then you go to the Firestore database again, you'd have your collection. Okay, so this is your collection, and we already added data to this. But let's say, let's create a new collection called um, favorite subjects. Okay, subjects. And then here you're going to create a document. So basically, you'd have a database, and and your database contains collections. Your collections, they contain documents, and your documents contain data. Okay, so if you have like a school system, then you'd have collections like students, grades, faculty, staff, and all those kind of, you know. And then your documents for students would be the students respectively, and then the faculty, staff. So here, let's auto generate an ID, and then the field, let's call it um, title, and then the value would be a string called embedded systems. Wow. CPE. Save. Okay, so now we've created a collection and a document and embedded systems. Favorite subject. Okay, now we're going to go back to my presentation. Okay, because I love my presentation. Okay, so basically, Firebase is an external database, and external databases, they are third party, and your web app needs to, this is not built in JavaScript, diba? So it's outside. So we're used to coding something like this, okay, in C. It's procedural, it's synchronous, okay? So basically, line 5 will not execute unless line 4, 3, 2, 1 is executed, diba? It's line by line by line by line. Pero the problem with that is that when we are accessing an external source, that takes time. Okay? And it doesn't even just take time, it takes bandwidth. It depends on your internet, guys. 'Di ba? Baka may nag-YouTube or may nanonood ng ng Netflix. Okay? So that could also be a factor. So your basically your event listeners cannot listen unless the data is returned. And your website basically is just is it won't work unless the data returns. Okay. Now here comes asynchronous JS. So I know that a lot of you guys are not really familiar with JavaScript, pero you can just reference naman JS with C. A feature of JS that is not in the common programming languages that the school teaches is asynchronous JS. Okay. So, what is asynchronous JS? So, basically, you have an event loop, diba? An event loop. So, your event loop is basically a task queue of your events. So, diba, the events of your website, a button click, a click, a mouse click, or diba, button click, diba? Button press, mouse click, scroll down, hover, or whatever event you have in your website. So that is in the event loop. Now, you can make a function asynchronous by running it in the background. And it basically won't disrupt the behavior of your website. It won't disrupt the event loop because it acts concurrently together with your event loop. So that is how not just Firebase, but that is how you're going to access any external API or data in JavaScript or TypeScript. Okay, now let's get into some coding pictures. Figure 1. Here we have get docs. So get docs here is a asynchronous function. This is from the Firebase library itself. This is asynchronous because we're accessing Firebase and then getting data out from it. Okay, it returns an object. It returns an object. Now let's look at JavaScript's fetch. So we have here a function that does fetching with a URL, and then this also returns an object. Okay. Now, so what the hell is that object? So that object, as cheesy as it might sound, is called a promise. Okay. But promises are meant to be broken. Diba? Not this time. So a promise is an object that is returned from an asynchronous call, like get docs, that returns a promise, fetch, that returns a promise, and it contains either of the two. Number one, it contains the resolved value of the call, or number two, the rejected value of the error. Or the error. No, the rejected value of the call, which is an error. So think of it like this, no? Um, it's just an object that when resolved, it contains your data, but when rejected, it's an error. That's it. That's your promise. So a promise could also be pending. So that is when you're calling the promise and it's currently querying. So that's when your function is querying through the database, for example, and then your promise is still waiting to for the function to finish and then return to your program. That's pending. A promise is also fulfilled when she chats back. Ito, joke lang, guys. A promise is fulfilled when it's either resolved na or rejected. Okay. So, how do you handle your promises? Diba? You use a dot then method that takes in a callback function. So, this might seem complicated, no? Medyo out of the not really what we're used to coding. So you call a dot then, and then that takes in a callback function. So to put that into perspective, imagine sa Olympics. So you'd have a referee or an official having a gun, not shooting the player, but shooting to the sky. That basically is similar to your function that is returning. The go signal, diba? When the gun is shot in the air, your athletes run. That's the callback function. So it's basically when your function returns and then it returns a promise, what do you do with it? So you call it that then. But what does it do next after it finishes? You have it that then. What does it do next? What is its function? How is that promise handled further through your callback function? And you're always passing these promises. Gosh, who got? You're always passing these promises, chaining them, and that's called a continuous passing style. Pero now let's look at JavaScript's fetch. Okay, so here we have a fetch, same as earlier. That returns a promise. We know that. That's asynchronous, diba? Now we call it dot then. So your dot then, your promise, as I've said, contains what? A resolved and rejected value. So here, as an argument for our callback function passed to the dot then is our resolved value called the response. Okay? Di ba? Simple lang. Asynchronous function, asynchronous call. It goes to whatever external stuff you have. It returns as a promise. You handle that through a dot then method, and you pass a callback function which has the resolved value as an argument, which in this case we're calling it response. You could call it whatever you like. You could call it Zach, your crush, or diba, your Brian. You could call it whatever you want, guys. No one will know unless your senior dev will review the code. Well, so now as it's also not on the top of the head, guys. It's from reading documentations. Your .json function converts your response, diba, to JSON. Of course, that's the purpose of the code. This is also asynchronous. So, what does this return? Chat in the chat box. What does this return? This is asynchronous too. So, a promise, diba? Correct. So, you handle that promise again by chaining another dot then. And then here you have a result na. So here, finally, in God's will, you get your data, the result. But of course, this is not this is the common not architecture, but coding style or syntax when fetching something. But there's a lot of styles when handling promises, but asynchronous calls. But know that it always returns a promise and you can handle it with a dot then. And from there, you could log into the console or run a debugger just to test lang na what does this output? Is this my actual data or is it not? So here you could return the data, but in this case, I logged it to the console. Now, I've said earlier, joke, I've said earlier na there is also a rejected value. You could pass that too as an argument, as a second argument to your response or to your result, because as I've said, it's a resolved value and a rejected value. But that's very redundant, okay? Don't repeat yourself. Dry principle. Don't repeat yourself. You could handle it. JavaScript does an amazing job at handling our error by just, you could just append a dot catch there and then pass in your rejection value and log it to the console or do whatever you want with it. Okay, so that's fetching data from JavaScript. Now let's look at Firebase. So Firebase, still here, you pass in a reference to your collection, which we will talk about later. And then through the get docs, a dot then, because it returns a promise, the resolve value. And then how do you, okay, as I've said, guys, it's not the same across different kinds of APIs. For Firebase, this is how you handle it. So here, what I did was I created a an array, an empty array. This is where I'm going to place my data. So this is like the final output na. So once I have a snapshot is basically like what your database looks like at this point in time. And then your snapshot has a property called docs, which contains every document in that collection, which is also why we're passing the collection reference here. So snapshot.docs and then dot for each. So dot for each is basically just a for loop, but it's simplified in JS. So you're looping through every document in your collection, and then for every document you have, you're pushing it to your test data and passing it as an object. So test data dot push, you create an object, and then you place here doc dot data. So your doc, each document in Firebase has a method called dot data, which is pertaining to the data, actual data itself. And then what's this dot dot dot? So this is the spread operator. So for example, because this is a new object, it's like removing the object, because if you don't do this, then it's an object inside an object, which we don't want. So you spread it out and just the data retains. It isn't an object, just the data itself inside our new object. And then you also add the ID. So the document also has a property called ID to call the ID. So as you've seen earlier, the auto-generated ID, that's the ID. Now you return that. Pero basically, it's just the same. You have an asynchronous call. You handle that promise through a dot then, and you pass a callback function to handle that promise. How do you handle when? How do you handle the promise when it returns from something external? You do this. So how did I do that? There's a very nice documentation for Firebase. Firebase fetching documents. So it's very Firebase has a neat documentation. So here you'd have all the code you need, guys. Initializing, let's say getting a document. So this, diba? So let's actually try it out. Let's get our subjects. So to do that, we're going back to our console. Joke, not that console. And let's go to project settings. So here, as I've said, now we need to do this. So going back to our VS Code, let's create a new terminal and run npm install Firebase. We're installing Firebase 9, the latest version of Firebase, as a dependency. So notice now it's not a dash D because this is not a development dependency. We need Firebase during production. So this will take a while, I think. Hmm. So after that, you're going to no go back to project settings. I'm going to go back to our this one. Copy this. This is the configuration. And then go back here. Let's paste it into our index.js. And then to fetch data, we need to import some additional functions from Firebase. So get Firestore collection to access a collection. And then get docs from Firebase slash Firestore. So we initialize our app here. Let's not do that. And then, so const db is equals to get Firestore. Now in this piece of code, this means that you're assigning a variable, you're declaring this variable to be your access point towards your database. Okay. So whenever you want to call your database, you just do db dot collection, db dot something. Okay. So then we'll store a reference to our collection, which is the subjects collection. So const um, subjects call ref, let's just call it that, and then collection, the method we imported earlier, you pass it two arguments, db, and the name of the collection, which is subjects. That's it. Now, here comes what I showed you earlier. Mm, so get docs, and then you pass in your collection, so subjects call ref. This returns a promise, so I know that we're going to use the dot then, and then the result value here is a snapshot, so I'm going to pass it as an argument in my callback. I'm going to return what I want to do with the snapshot. So let test data is equals to an empty array first, snapshot, the docs for all the documents, that for each, so cycle through, iterate through each document, pass in another callback function with doc as an argument. You could name it whatever you want, x, Zach, or let's just name it Zach, and then equal, so arrow function, and let's just name it doc, guys, for readability. Sorry, Zach. Um, so you're going to push data now, test data, dot push, and then a new object, as I've said, and then dot use, since this is also an object, this doc.data. If you just do doc.data, is there to doc.data, won't work because it's an object itself. But if we spread it out like that, then that's more appropriate. Then id doc.id. Okay, so your id won't be returned, but we just want it to be explicit, so show it. It's also important, guys, because your id is the reference. So if you have another collection that wants to access this collection, it's nice that you also return the id. So just log it to the console.log test data, and then if we have an error, as I've said, catch that bad boy and just log it na lang. Error.message. Okay, now we're going to test it. So let's look at the bundle. Damn, son. It's gibberish that I don't understand. So this is what Webpack does. It's just 34 lines and your bundle is, I don't know. I don't even understand. So let's go to our ano. So here we have two. So embedded systems and wow, Brian was here. Wow. Shout out, Brian. Okay, so I think that ends my part. Yeah, no more slides. Um is Lex already here? Wow, nice cut,
Testing.
G.
Testing.
Okay, so that's
Fire
it, guys,
lit
for
haircut.
my presentation. Now let's move on to how do we fetch data, create, post data to the database, and update our data, or as well as delete data. What if your crush rejected you and you placed her in the database? No, delete,
What?
delete, delete. Okay,
Okay.
so I'm going to stop sharing na. Okay, adios.
Right, let me share. Share
If you're
screen.
awake, guys, please say nice cut Lex in the chat.
Okay. Oh, dili pa ko moderator or something. Nice. Thank you. Thank you. Di ko share screen.
Jurgen co-host.
Uh, okay,
Bro.
wait.
Ako pagzak ay
Also to Victor.
My co-host. Yes.
Nice.
Okay. So there.
Left in one. Share. Okay. Oh, wait. Spin one. Spin one,
Saan si
spin two.
V?
Spin two there.
V na ba? Shout out na si V.
Okay.
Ako.
Nice.
Ay, dara, here. Okay.
Okay, everyone all goods? Nice. Okay, so right now we're gonna discuss. Okay, thank you, thank you. Thanks for complimenting my cut. It's a pretty nice haircut, slick. If you want, just tell your barber it's skin fade. Okay, brush up. Okay, so now let's start. I'm gonna be discussing first how to fetch data from Firebase and then deleting and adding data to Firebase. Okay. Okay, so Jur has already set up most of the things with a little bit of exception since we were testing this a while back. So it's test call ref, test data, instead of subject call ref, subject data, and so on and so forth. So yeah, let's start with fetching data. So first, we're gonna have to set up our HTML so that it can present the data that we want. First, let me run this thing first. Wait, here. 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 There you go. Let me run npm run build. And then I believe I was using a different one for running my index at HTML. Okay, I'm gonna just use an extension. So we have a VS Code extension. I think this was already shown. So our VS Code extension is live server. We can open this with live server, and then it should run. Let me wait. Okay, there we go. Firebase Workshop. And then we have our console. Okay, let me put this to the side. Or is it? I think it's this one. Okay, here. The console. Okay, a lot of errors. We have an array. Oh yeah. So we have a crush name, and my crush is Zach. There you go. Zach Munchkin. Or Munchkin. So let's start. So to start off, we want to add a table to our HTML. I'll probably give you the script just for that, the HTML, so that we can focus on the Firebase side instead of doing something. Okay, so we're just gonna copy and paste this, and I'll walk you through what this thing does. We only need this part for now, which is the table, and as well as the bootstrap. So bootstrap is just consider that. Okay, it's just a library to create fast, responsive sites, and they basically have everything that we need to style immediately. So you can just scroll through the docs. You have forms here, and you just need this code, and you'll have this thing. Okay. So right now we need a table. So first, let me copy the bootstrap code. What's that? Okay, we're just gonna copy this link. You can also find this in Bootstrap. I'll put this at the top. From the top, make it drop. Okay, so we have the table. This one is also just retrieved from Bootstrap. So we have a table here. There you go. So table, table dark, table stripe, so on and so forth. We have table, and we're gonna paste it here. So our goal right now is, since February 14 is coming, and as suggested by our team, maybe you want to find the one for you for your February 14 Valentine's Day. So we're gonna list off some prospects that maybe you can chat to, and if they say yes, that's free pub. If they say no, then maybe we can try another one, you know? So we're gonna rename this to February 14 prospects, and then where was that? We're gonna add a class name of h1. This just bootstrap things, text center, and then a margin of 4. So now let's look at the Firebase workshop. So we have this, and then we have our table. So there's no contents yet for our table. So we're gonna have an ID, a name, and then when did you ask him or her out, or both, and then we have a yes. If they said yes or no. What else? Okay, let's also add a class here since it's too wide. Okay, now it's a little bit more centered. So class container. And then we're gonna add a sample data. Wait, let me check how you create a table row. In this one, we have a row. Let's copy paste this. That's what we do. Table row. Let's name it. Let's give it an ID of 1. Let's remove this. Scope row. Name is Zach Munchkin. And then we asked him out, probably February. Date is it today? So February 4, 2023. And did he say yes? Let's just say heart. Alright. Okay, there we go. So it should pop up now. Nice, we have an entry. However, we don't want this to be static. We want it to be dynamic. We want to retrieve from our Firebase. We want to retrieve from Firebase. So what we do to fetch data, so we have our index.js here, and then anything that happens here will be transpiled into this bundle.js, and this bundle.js is already attached to our index.html. So we're gonna edit our index.js so that we can display the data that we want. So first, I've created a prospects here, but I'm gonna remove it. Let's start at the very beginning. So I actually forgot how to remove this. Okay, let's just rename it. Just create another one called prospects2. Next. And then let's create a document ID. Let's give it an ID automatically. We're gonna have a name set to a string value. Let's say Zach, and add another field, which is a boolean. So we're gonna set it to true. Okay, false for now. And this will be the said yes. You can choose whichever you want. and we have an asked at field, which will be a timestamp. So there are two ways you can store dates in Firebase. You can either use a number, I believe a number, and then you can use a Unix time so that it will be precise. You can look that up. What is a Unix time? Okay, this one. It's a number of seconds starting from 1970, I think, 1970 January 1. And then you could either do that or we can use the timestamp. So since I want to showcase how to use the timestamp, then we'll do the timestamp. So we have February 4, and let's just set this to anything we want. And then save. So prospects 2. So let's add another one. Add another document, ID, Zach part 2. Oh no, that's a field. Zach part 2, name, add a field, said yes, boolean. Let's set this one to true, and then asked at timestamp 4. Okay, that one. So true, February 4 to 2023, Zach part 2. This one is false, and yeah. Okay, so where was it? Okay, so now what we want to do is display the things that we just added. So first, let me delete this part. Okay, no, let's just use that for reference. So first, as discussed by Jer, we are gonna create a reference to this collection. To create a reference to the collection, we're gonna use the collection function from Firebase Firestore to get a reference. So first we have const prospects call ref is equal to collection. We're gonna pass the DB so it knows which DB it's gonna extract from. And this one is Firestore. So we also have real time. So we have DB, and then we have the name, which is prospects2. I believe this is case sensitive, so if this was lowercase, it will not retrieve any data. If this is uppercase, then you're all good. So now we are gonna get the documents, these things. So we're gonna get the documents from our collection prospects. So we get docs from this reference. And then, since this is a promise, we're gonna go then we're gonna take each snapshot or each snapshot of the document in prospects call ref, and then we are gonna set each data. We're gonna create an empty array. It's gonna be const. And then for each snapshot, we're gonna get the docs, and then we're gonna pass a lambda function, and then we're gonna push the data to the we're gonna push the data in each doc into the data array. So pass that doc.data, and then the ID is doc.id. We're gonna console log this first, just to ensure that we have all the data that we need. Of course, if an error, date. Oh, okay. Nice catch. Now we get a catch. Catch error.
Nice transition. Nice cut. Perfect combo.
Error that message. Okay, so we're gonna get the docs from prospects reference, and then for each snapshot, we're gonna store each document from each snapshot into the data array, and then we're gonna log it. If an error occurs in this entire process, then we're gonna also log the error message. So let's see. Should automatically regenerate since Webpack doing Webpack things. Okay, there we have it. So we have Zach part 2, and then we have Zach. Right, Pog. So we want to display it here in the body of the table. So if you have some experience with JavaScript, HTML and DOM manipulation. You can just get a reference to this body tag. We're gonna set an ID so that we can easily query for it, and then we're gonna set its inner HTML to whatever we create here. So right now you will need to learn about, you'll be able to apply map, I believe, map and inner HTML, and querying, get element by ID. So with these three functions, we should be able to do that. So we have const. Let's first get the body. Const body. Okay, let's just call it table body. No. Prospects. No. What? Let's just call it prospects. Prospects display. Get document dot get element by ID. Prospects dash. Okay. Wow, I have a memory of a goldfish. Prospects table dash body. Okay. Next, so we can display to this one using inner HTML. Let's first create this into, into a string that we can pass here to the inner HTML. So instead of using for each, we can map each of the documents in the snapshot and then turn them into lists. Table rows. So let's do that. I'll walk you through it. So that map, instead of doing this, we're gonna return a string that looks like this. Copy this, turn. We're gonna use the backticks since we're gonna be interpolating the string. Base, where is my base? Okay, I hit them. Where control V? Okay. Control V works. Nice. So we have the th scope row. First we have the ID, and then the name, and then the date, and then if they said yes. So first we have the doc. So the ID is pretty simple. We're just gonna interpolate it using the syntax $ followed by a curly brace, and then we're gonna pass the ID here. So now this will be dynamically generated with the ID passed from the document. And then we have the name. So to get the name, we're gonna need to parse it from const data equals doc.data. Since the document only has, you have to get the data from a function in the document. So we have data.name. Since we named it name in our Firebase, here, name. And then we also have the date, data.date. And then we have data.setYes. Okay. This one is gonna return an array since it's a map function. So we have table row, rows. And then we are gonna set our prospects display inner HTML to the rows. So prospects display dot inner HTML is equals to rows dot join. Okay. So now we have it. So we have the ID, it's from Firebase. Okay, this one. And then the name, and then ask at. We're gonna tackle why this is undefined, and then yes, true, false. Oh wait, this is not date. This should be asked up. Okay, we're gonna tackle why this is a timestamp. Wow. Okay, then yes, true or false. So far, any questions for now? Maybe that was a bit confusing. Maybe you wanna ask something before we proceed. No questions? Okay. Okay. So the silence means yes, silence means no. Okay. If no questions, maybe you can ask later if you're a bit confused. Okay, so far, I think that's it. That's it for fetching data. So this join here, since this thing is a string, so basically the rows field will return a string. If you print that, it's gonna show that they're all strings of table row. This join here basically joins all the strings inside of the array into one whole string. You can actually log that we can then pass into the inner HTML, since this thing is expecting a string. There you go. Table row, td, th, td, td, tr, so on and so forth. Okay. So now that we have dynamically generated items into our HTML, we need to fix this first. So our timestamp is not in a correct format. So using timestamps, you actually have a toDate method. You see here, timestamp.toDate. It basically converts the timestamp object of Firebase into a date. So, and you have this long thing. If you want to improve it a little bit further, you can go local date string. So this is a built-in JavaScript method for all dates, and then it just converts your date into a format that is the same as how we would write it here in the Philippines. Okay, so 2/4/2023. Okay, pretty neat. So February 4, 2023, I asked Zach part 2, and he said yes. And I asked him again, and he said false. Okay. So what else can we do? I think that's about it. That's about it for fetching data and displaying it to the DOM. And if you have questions, you can ask now before we proceed to adding and deleting data in Firebase. That's a bit too fast. No. Wait a minute. Couple minutes. Okay, I'm back. So, no questions at all, huh? Okay. Understandable. So we have... Okay, we can delete this already since that might be a problem, as you can see. If you're quick enough, you can see that it appears one Zoc Munchkin and then it gets replaced. So just for consistency, we can remove this. I think I can show you better. I think we can go network and then we can throttle it to slow 3G. Okay, Zoc Munchkin, February 4, and then it fetches from Firebase. We are waiting. And then, yeah, there we go. Zoc part 2 and Zoc. Okay, no throttling. We don't want to throttle our internet. We're gonna delete this so that it's a little bit more consistent. It's empty, then it's not empty. Okay, so now that we know how to fetch and display items in Firebase, we can then add the features on how to add items to Firebase. So again, I've sent you this paste bin. Oh wait, I've sent you this paste bin. It has all the items that we need. So I'm just gonna copy paste this form, since it's not really something that we need to explain. Okay, so basically this form essentially just takes in a name, a date, and then if that person said yes or no. So add prospect, so there's the p tag, the form, and then this is just how you write a form in Bootstrap. So you say form. Okay, this thing, I just copy pasted this and then edited it to fit what I need.
Lex, nag-muted ka.
Wow! Nice. Forgot na muted ka. Okay. Which part na muted? From the fetching part? Oh no! Okay, after the forms. So just like the forms, so copy paste, simple as that. We're just gonna copy paste this. So the forms has a title, which is this thing, add prospect, and then fields. Just copy pasted this from Bootstrap, and so on and so forth. So we have a name that is type text. We have an asked at that is type date, since we want to use the date picker from HTML. And then we have a checkbox that says if it said yes or no. So let's go here, and we're gonna add the functionality for the add prospect. So we're gonna fetch the add form using its ID. Wait, did I place an ID on that one? Okay, this is one. Form ID is add prospect form. Let me copy that. So add form is equals to document.get element by ID add prospect form. And then we are gonna add an event listener to it, such that when we submit, we are going to do this thing in this function. So first, let's prevent the default. So this thing just prevents our form from refreshing every time you submit. If you comment that out, whenever you submit, the page is just gonna refresh. Okay, see? It refreshed and it directed to a page that it doesn't know about. So we don't want that to happen. We're gonna do an prevent default. So when we submit now, said yes, submit. Okay, didn't work. Why did you not work? It's that prevent default, Maji. Okay, let me refresh. Anyways, stop live server, open live server. Oh, are you fine? Or said yes, submit. Okay, there we go. It's not refreshing anymore. That's weird. Pretty weird. Let's go back to our index.js. Why would you not do this? Okay. So we have the prospect, asked at, and so on. Okay, so prevent default, and then we're gonna get our form data using the form data class from JavaScript. So this thing just parses the form data from our form. And you can get our form by using the target, e.target. So if you were to console log e.target, you're gonna get your form. Inspect. Oh no! Get that one. Turn this off. Console. Oh yeah, you have to submit. Forgot. Said yes. Submit. Okay, here you have your class form. When you hover over it, it's gonna highlight the form as well. Okay, so the form data basically takes in a form element, and then it parses the, what do you call this? The fields by their name. It's gonna return a set of entries with the name of the field followed by their value. So to show that, let's show you how to do it. So we have form data equals new form data. Then we're gonna console.log. We're gonna create object.entries. Object.from entries. Form data.entries. So we have const data. console.log. Gonna submit. For said yes, submit. Okay, there you have it. So you have the name, Munchkin, ask at, the date, said yes, on. So by default, the value of a checkbox, if you don't set it with the value attribute here, it's gonna be either on or just nothing at all. So for this one, we have a name of ask at, that's why we have that one. Okay, we already refreshed. So they're gonna take the key, which is retrieved from the name, and then they're gonna retrieve the value when the form was submitted, and then use that to turn it into an object. So you have key value pairs. This form data.entries essentially just creates, it's better to show you. It essentially creates an array of key value pairs. Submit. Okay, it's gonna say an iterator. Okay, it's using the iterator. So essentially the form that data.entries is gonna look like this. So you have a key and then a value and then another key and a value and then so on and so forth. And you're gonna use the object that from entries to convert this into an object. So it's gonna look like this already. Key value, key value. So you're having a JavaScript object instead of using this type of array. So we're essentially doing this here. So we have the form data and then the object at entries. And then now that we have that data, we're going to do a bit of manipulation, since currently 1, I'm gonna go back to that one. So yes, so 1, this one is a string instead of a boolean. Here, this one is a boolean, this one is a string, this one is a string, this one is a string, this one is a timestamp, and this one is a string. So we don't want that. That's an inconsistent data type inside of our DB. Although that works since Firebase is NoSQL, so it doesn't really care. It doesn't have that support that SQL has, that it enforces that this column should be one type, this one should be another type, and that thing should be another type. No. NoSQL doesn't care what you put in the DB as long as it's not something illegal. Okay. How about we just show you that you can add this already instead of forming it. Okay. So first, I'm gonna just show you how it looks like in the DB and how it works. So we're gonna use the add doc from Firebase. So this one just adds a document into the Firebase, into your Firestore, and what it does is it needs first a reference to your DB. So this one. So it needs a reference to your DB, and then the data that you want to add to your DB. Then you can also do something after it's done, and if it has an error, you can log that error using the .catch method. So console.log. Okay, so we're gonna try it. Munchkin 4 said yes, submit. Okay, so this one. So as you can see, it's a string, it's a string, it's a string, and right now it hasn't reflected on our page, since we need to reload the page every time we make changes. Application.reload. Or you can also do a refetch every time you submit. That also works, but for this one I'd prefer the reload since it's a lot more simpler. It also clears the form immediately after submitting, since you're just reloading the page, and then it refreshes due to this function here. So it's not extra steps. So right now we have an error, data.askAt.toDate is not a function, it's from here. And that's because one of our data types is a string. That's why it's causing this error. Now you could do some logic in checking that, hey, is this a string? Hey, is this a timestamp? And so on and so forth. However, that's gonna be a little bit more code, and we don't want to write more code. So to prevent that, we want to make our database consistent. So first, let's update the setYes that instead of using on, it's gonna turn into a boolean. So we have data.setYes, and then we're just gonna use is equals to on. So if data.setYes is equal to on, then this is gonna be set to true. If it's not, it's gonna be set to false. Okay, pretty simple stuff. Now for the timestamp, we are gonna be using the timestamp class from Firebase, and then data as at is equals to timestamp dot from date new date data dot ask. Okay, so this thing, we're just creating a date object from the string that we got from the form, since it's gonna be a string in the form of something like 2022-01-01. Now this is just a string, it's not a date object. So now we're using the new date constructor to create a date object from it, and then we are using the timestamp from Firebase to convert the date into a timestamp object, since the timestamp in Firebase is different from a date in JavaScript. So now, if we were to create another object, to create another entry into our database, it should work. So if we delete this, wait, no, that's not what I want. Delete document, start delete. You should be able to see the items again, since there is no inconsistencies. Set 4, set yes, submit. Okay, so now we have Munchkin for February 4, 2023, true. Can do another one. I wanna put Brian this time, so it's gonna be 5. Okay, he didn't say yes, so submit, and so on and so forth. So you have the ID, Brian. Okay, that's about it. That's about it for adding into our database, and everything should reflect here. Wait, they're ordered descendingly. Okay, so your data should be ordered, if it has a timestamp, it's going to be ordered in a descending manner. So it starts from February 5, and then 8:02, 8:01, and then 8 o'clock. Okay, just keep that in mind if you're using timestamps. So, any questions for adding data into your Firebase? No questions? Any questions? Oh no. Okay. Gitu jadi ko. I single? No, I'm already taken by Zach. He has taken my heart away from me. Yeah, I admire Zach a lot, because every time that he's really hardworking, he just got that aura of amazingness, and I'm into that. That's a secret, Bri. You shouldn't ask.
What barbershop though, Lex?
Oh, at barbershop? I think no. It was not a salon. I think it was Tough. That's what place. At Bang Marina Mall. Stop, student of bus. Wow! Wow! Okay, sponsored by Tough. True. Okay, I think no questions so far, since the topic is diverted into Tough. Okay. So we can move on to the more simpler stuff now. It is just deletion of data. It's gonna be pretty quick since adding and fetching was pretty long. This one is actually just really short line of code. So again, we're gonna go here to the paste bin that I've given. Wait, where's the chat? And we're just gonna copy this. It's a really short line of code. So this form just takes in the ID, this thing. You can also query by name, but that's a little bit too long to discuss. We just want you to give you the basics. So we're gonna take the ID, and then using that ID, we can delete the item. So this one, let's get the form as always. Let's delete prospect form. Okay. Should be the same as the add form. Just gonna duplicate this, delete form. So we have delete prospect form, and then again we're gonna add an event listener. Now submit, on submit, we are going to do, we're gonna prevent default first so that it doesn't refresh when we submit. And then we are going to get, we're gonna convert the items, the fields, the form. We're gonna get the form data from the form. And then from the form data, we're gonna get the ID. Let's get ID. So the form data also has a method called get, and it essentially gets the value of a key in the form. So the key here is ID, since the name of the field is ID, and then we can just query it here. So we're gonna get the ID from the form data, and then they should give us a string form of the ID. So now, to delete a document, instead of using, what do you call this? Instead of using a collection reference, we are going to get a document reference. No, that's doc, not docref. So we have doc. So this one, doc, is gonna take in a database, just like the collection. It's gonna take in our database, and then the name of the collection, which is prospects2. So this one, db prospects2. This one is also case sensitive, so be wary. It would be nice if we could extract this into another variable, but for now, this one is working fine. So db prospects2 and then id. So this one is not going to return anything. It does return something. It's going to return the document reference. And then the delete the doc, we're going to use the delete doc function. So delete doc, so you have add doc, get docs, delete doc, and then so on. So we have delete doc. It's gonna take in a document reference. We're gonna take the document reference that we have here, and then we're gonna do something after it is successful. If an error occurs, then we're just gonna log the error. Okay, since we want this to reflect just like the add doc, we're going to do a location.reload. Okay, that's about it. So now if you take this, delete, okay, it's deleted. Check the database. Now we have 3 records. We're gonna take this, delete. Okay, same thing. Okay, pretty neat. Okay, that's about it for me. And yeah, our next speaker would be Brian. So I guess we can have the questions later. Hey, yeah. Is Brian there?
Yes.
Oh, ASMR. ASMR.
Okay, so I'll share my screen now. Wait, Lex, can you stop sharing screen?
Don't make him mad, Lex. Why?
Okay. Okay,
I'm
so
sorry, Bri.
okay, so yeah, so good evening, guys. I'll be teaching you the last part. Save the best for last. So that's why I think Lex will have something after me, po. So, but yeah, so for this part, I'll just go over the code. So this is basically where Lex stopped. Um, although like some of the variable names are different, so similar to like what happened between like jury and Lex, some of the variable names are different, but then the overall flow is pretty much the same. Um, so yeah, the first thing I'll be teaching you guys is how to query data. So um, here, this is what the web page looks like. Again, it's basically what Lex made. So what we want to do now is we want to be able to query specific data, because that's something that you would normally do when you have like a database. So instead of just getting a single document, there are cases where you want to get like a bunch of documents that fit the same that fit some condition. So in this case, we'll be doing it with the name. So let's say we want to search documents with the names of like Brian or Zach. So that's what I'll be teaching you guys. So right now I have some dummy data here. Um, but then the people here aren't dummies, diba, Zach? Oh. But yeah, so this is just some dummy data I left here so that I can show you guys better that the query function basically gets more than one document. So yeah, to get started, I will do what I've always done and write off of what Lexus just did and copy paste everything Lex did. So basically, yeah, we're gonna be following a similar setup where we'll have a form that will allow us to specify the name we want to search, and then we'll have a table here that'll display the names that'll display the documents that have the name we want. So yeah, let me just copy paste this. Okay, why reinvent the wheel when Lex already made it? So here we'll just call it like search or query prospect. So query prospects, and then so instead of yeah, I'll just change some of these attributes here because we can't have multiple elements with the same ID. And also just to be sure, I'll just quickly go over this because the HTML isn't the main point of this. So you can find the code here. This is actually the repo for this tutorial. So if you can't, or if you get stuck somewhere and then you weren't able to catch up, you can always revisit the repo so that you can see what we did here. So yeah, I'll just update these. So instead of update, it's query, then um, so the name of the person, and then ID is name, and then name, and then search. And we'll just change the looks a bit so it looks different from the other buttons. So then here, instead of query prospect, or instead of prospects table, it's query table. So if we reload the page, yeah, this is what it looks like. I just added this form here and then a table header because we don't have any data yet. So for the back end, we can basically do the same thing and copy off of what Lex did again. So I'll just add an event listener here. So query prospect form, and then query prospect form to select the form we just added here. So this form is selected, and then yeah, we'll just copy this because it's similar structure but then just different logic. So instead of add prospect form, we'll add an event listener to the query prospect form. So on submit, we'll again prevent the page from reloading, and then we're going to get the data. But then in this case, we don't have multiple fields that we can take from. We only have one, because as you can see, we only have the name field, so we don't actually need this object dot from entries. So instead of doing this, we can do name equals form data dot get, and then name. So the name here corresponds to the name tag of this input field. So as you can see, this is again poorly named. So the attribute tag, or the attribute is name, and then the value of that is name. So we have to provide basically the name of the attribute here. So this basically fetches whatever we input in this field, and then we can query. So once we have the data, we'll need to import a function called query. So it's properly named. Then in this query, it actually returns something, so we have to save it to a variable. So query, so we'll query the first argument we need to specify is the collection we're querying from. So obviously the first thing you need to do when you create a query is you have to specify where you're searching it from. So in this case, the collection is prospect. So we'll just actually copy paste this prospect ref here. So it's that we're basically saying in this prospect reference, we want you to search for documents. And then the second argument is where we specify the conditions we want our document to have. So we import this where function. So this is where we can specify the conditions. So we want the name. So I'll just type this out. So we want the name. So the name corresponds to this attribute, this field here that says name. So we want this name field to have the value. So to have the value is just equal. And we want it to have the value of whatever we provided here. So so this is actually the entire query. That's basically it. And then let me just console.log it so that we can see it better. So if I run this, let's try searching Brian, and then so you can see this actually returns the query because it says here of type query, but it doesn't actually return the data we want. So in order to actually get the data we want, which is basically the documents that have a name of Brian, we need to add another function called onSnapshot. So what onSnapshot does, within this context, it basically allows us to get the data we need from the query. So it returns a snapshot, and then let's just console.log. So what we need to get from here, I think it was demonstrated earlier. So similar to what Lex did. So this is the same snapshot object. So to get the documents we need, we can just do snapshot.docs. So for now, let's just print it out and see what we get. So Brian, and then, if you see here, we actually have the data we need. As you can see, it has the ID and then the data somewhere. So let me just print that out. So .docs, actually, let me just snapshot.docs.map doc. So let's print out the actual data contained within the document. So console.log doc.data and doc.id. Is this returning an error? Okay. Yeah. Expecting that. Okay, let's just try printing out the document data for now. So we search Brian. Okay, so we actually get 4 documents because it's mapping through each of them and then printing those. So this actually returns the data we want because we have 4 documents where the name is Brian and it's printing them out here. So with that, we can actually append this data to the table. And to do that, again, similar to what Lex has already done, let me just copy paste this first and then place it here. So, okay, so let's see if this works. So, okay, so this is basically the logic to write the data to the table. And then instead of writing it to table, because table corresponds to this element, but then we want to write it to this specific table here in the bottom. So instead of table, we actually need to update it to this table here, which has an ID of query table body. So const query table document dot get element by ID query table body, and then we'll place it here. And so hopefully this works. If I search Brian, it should. Okay, so we got it to work. So this is what the output looks like. So when I search Brian, it returns all the documents with the name of Brian. Then if I change it to like Zach, then it will only return 2 documents because only 2 documents have the name of Zach. And that's how you query documents. Then the next thing, the next topic is kind of like a supplementary topic to this, which is how do we order the documents we queried, because if I go here, if I search Brian again, you can see that the way this is ordered is just the way it was created. So like you can see that the order here is the same as the order here. But then what if we want to sort it by, let's say, like ask that? So to do that, we can import another function called order by. So as the name implies, it orders the return documents by a specific field. So in this case, let's say we want to return, or we want to order it by the date we asked that. So we go back to our query function call, then after we pass in the conditions for the documents, we specify the order. So order by ask that, because that's the name of the field here. Yeah, so ask that, so we'll order by ask that. So if we do this, let's order it, let's say in descending order. So we want to order it by whichever has the latest date comes first. So if we do this and then we search Brian, we get, oh no, we get an error. So if you guys are following along and you get this error, it's nothing to worry about, because it's basically saying that the query, it says here, the query requires an index. So if you're doing an order by, you actually need to index the variables you're ordering by. So in this case, we need to actually create an index for the name and the ask that field. And the way to do that is really simple. Firebase already provides you the link. So if you just click on this link and then follow it, you get to, so you sign into the project, and then what it basically does is it redirects you to this page and it asks you to create this composite index. So it actually has everything sorted out for you if you run into this error, because it's fairly common. So yeah, it says here it will create an index for the name in ascending, and then ask that a descending, because that's what we specified, because we're searching by the name and then we're ordering by the ask that. So all you need to do is really just click index, and then once you do that, it will start building, and this building will take a few minutes. Since we're short on time, I actually prepared another index already. So it's exactly the same, except instead of ordering ask that in descending order, it orders it by ascending order here. So all we need to do is just change this. So once we do that, if I run this again here, it actually runs. So as you can see, it's ordering it based on whichever date came earlier. But yeah, this is just for demonstration purposes. You actually have to, when you build an index, you have to wait for a few minutes before you can start querying again. Otherwise, it'll still keep throwing the error. So just keep that in mind, that you always need an index when you're ordering your queries. So yeah, once we have that, if I search, so yeah, so we're able to query the data and we're able to sort the data we queried. So we can actually move on to the next part, which is just the fetching a single document. So I believe Lex demonstrated earlier how to get multiple documents. So the process is fairly the same, but instead of getting multiple documents, we only get one. And the way we can do that again is first we'll create another table and form to search for that specific document. So let me go here and then copy paste this again. So instead of query prospects, we're just getting one prospect. And then let me just change some of these attributes. Okay, so when it comes to the method we're using to get a specific document relies on being fed the ID. So we can't actually use any other field besides the ID. So that's why I'll specify this field here. And then ID equals ID. And then instead of query table body, it's just prospect table body. So just to see how it looks. Yeah, it looks fairly similar. Okay, let me change this. So instead of search, let's just say fetch, and then warning, so that it looks different. So this is what it looks like. So yeah, we have to feed in the ID, and then when we click fetch, it should fetch a specific document, or the specific document we're asking for. So once we do that, okay, so let's go back to the JavaScript, and then we can copy paste this. but then we'll just change the values. So we'll just change some of the values here. So this will refer to the form. Oops. And then this will refer to the table. Let me just make sure I got this right. So prospect form is here, and then the other is prospect table body, which is here. Okay, so this selects the elements we want. Then we just need to add an event listener to the prospect form. So on submit, again, prevent the page from reloading, and then we get the data we need. So the data we need isn't actually a name anymore, it's ID. As you can see here, we changed it because we want the ID. So get the ID, and then form data.get ID. And instead of doing all this query stuff, we can actually just follow, again, follow what Lex did. So we create a reference to the document. So this again creates the reference the document in the specific database and with this specific ID. And then what we can do is just get doc. So we just feed in the reference, so docref, and then as you can see, this returns a promise. So if we want to get the actual document, we have to add a .then method, and then this is where we can fetch the document. So let's just console.logget for now, so that we can see what it contains. So I'll just query this last one here. So if I fetch it, okay, so it's returning something, but it's not the exact data we need. So again, the way we can do that is just with data. So if I fetch this, yeah, it prints the document that we searched for. So now we just have to add it to the table, and again, we can just reuse this method here. So this doc here, we can copy paste this, then doc copy paste. Oops. Okay, so let's just copy paste the inner logic. So instead of console.log, we're writing it. So instead of return, we can actually just write it to the table right away because this is just a single element. So so we can just do prospect table dot inner HTML equals inner HTML equals this, and hopefully this doesn't break. So let's try this again. Search by ID, and if we fetch it, yay! So we got the data we asked for. So this is how you search for a specific document. Again, it's very similar to this get docs method that Lex introduced to you earlier, but instead of fetching multiple docs, it just searches for one. So yeah, you guys have any questions before I proceed? Okay, going once, going twice. Okay. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, feel free to chat them, and yeah, we'll discuss them in the open forum. So the last thing I'll teach you guys is how to update documents. So we've gone through how to add a document, how to delete a document, how to read a bunch of documents, how to read specific documents, and how to get like a specific document. So the last thing we can teach you guys so that you guys can go like create like full CRUD APIs is how to update a document. And yeah, to do that, we need to import a function which is properly named update doc. So Firebase has really good documentation and properly named functions. So yeah, that's another reason why it's super easy to learn. And for this last one, we're actually not going to use a table because we actually don't really need a table for the update. We just need to create a form, and then we can visualize it some other way. Or there's a way to visualize it, but I'll cover that after. So we just need to copy the form. So instead of query prospects, it's update the prospect, and then let me just update this stuff. Update. So the field will change. Is going to be the name. We can change any field we want, but then the easiest one to change for now is the name field because that has a simple type, which is just a string. So name oops, prospect name for, just to be sure, update prospect name, and then update prospect name. And we'll actually need two fields. We'll need the name because that's what we want to update, and we'll also need the ID field because that's the field, that's how we specify what document to update. Otherwise, the function won't know which document it should apply the changes to. So update prospect ID, update prospect ID. Just make sure this is okay. And then let me just change this. So instead of fetch, it's going to be update. So yeah, if I go here, it shows the form, and then we can go to the JavaScript and actually set up the logic needed to update the document through our web app. So let me just update this. Update prospect. Update prospect. Table. Oh, actually, we don't need the table, so I'll just delete this. So update prospect form. So again, here we'll get both. So we need both the ID and the name. So we'll get the form data.get name, and then yeah, we also need this document reference. So it's actually fair. So yeah, after this, instead of get doc, all we need to do actually is just update doc. So update doc. So it says here we need to pass in a reference as the first parameter. So we'll pass in docref, and then the second argument is basically the data we want to change. And in this case, we only need to change the name, so we'll just pass in name. Again, the full expression is name, so we pass in the name and then the value. But then since the key and the value are the same, we can just pass in. Well, we can just pass them in as one. But yeah, it's basically the same thing as doing this, but then with like less characters. So if we do this, let's try it out. Hopefully this works. Okay, so let me just get this. Let me just get this latest one here, and then update it. So instead of Brian, we'll change it to Lex Guapo. Okay, it's always true. So yeah, if I click on update, we're getting an error. But why? Okay, so says cannot read properties of null. Oh, okay. Maybe this isn't the. Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, instead of ID, it's supposed to be update prospect ID. Prospect ID, and then update prospect name. So let's try this again. This one, and then change the name to Lex Guapo. I do this. Well, it doesn't return anything, but let's check the Firebase console. So this one. Okay, so as you can see, it actually made the changes. So it says this is the ID, so it corresponds to this document, and then the name we want to change it to is Lex Guapo. So it changed the name from Brian to Lex Guapo. So we got it to work, and then I guess like the last thing to add to this is we can actually listen to these changes in real time, because normally when you make changes to like your data, you want it to reflect on the page in real time. You don't want to have to wait until like a page reload just to see the data. And the way we can do that is actually through this on snapshot method. So we're basically using this again, but okay. So the way we can visualize it is I can fetch it here. So yeah, when I fetch this document, it returns it here. So what I'll do in this table is I'll attach a on snapshot event listener. So on snapshot docref. So what this basically does is whenever whenever the document that this docref refers to changes, this snapshot method will run, and then we can retrieve the updated document. So again, whenever the document changes, on snapshot basically allows us to access the new the new document or the updated document. So we get in doc, and let's just console.log it for now. Doc.data. So let's try fetching this. Let's fetch it, and then I'll try changing the name again back to Brian. So if I click on this, you can see that it actually the second thing it printed out is actually this document, but then updated. So if we have the updated document, we can actually update our page in real time as well, instead of just printing it out on the console. And the way we can do that is very similar here, or very similar to what we did here. So we're just going to write at the table again. And yeah, if we do this, so as you can see, if I fetch this document here, so this fetches the document. If I want to update it to, let's say, Zach Munchking. So if I click on update, it actually updates the table in real time. So that's the power of on snapshot. It allows you to access data, or it allows you to access changes to your data in real time. So like the applications for this are like real time chat applications or notifications. So yeah, this is one of the most powerful tools you can use in Firebase, at least from my experience. So yeah, we've learned. Okay, so I guess the last thing we can do is when we click on update, we want to clear this form, because we don't want to, if we're updating like multiple if we're trying to update multiple documents, we don't want to have to clear the form each time. So the way we can do that is just through so update doc actually returns a promise, so we can do a dot then, and then we don't do anything. We'll just do location dot reload. So it's very similar to what Lex did for his I think it was his add or his delete doc. So the moment we click on update, it updates the document and it reloads the page so that it clears the form. So okay. Okay, so let me do this again. Let me fetch it here and then change the name back to Brian. So if I click on this, it you saw it, yeah, it gets updated in real time, then it refreshes the page so that all the forms get cleared. And yeah, that's basically how you update the document. So we taught you how to, yeah, we basically taught you how to do like full CRUD operation with the API, and this is basically all there is to it. But then it's how you use it that can make your like application super powerful. So yeah, that's it for me. Yeah, from what I've searched. So for example, if you're searching for like if your where clause has the name field, and then you're searching by like created at, and then you want to do it in ascending order, you have to create an index for that. And then if you change it to like descending order, you also have to create an index for that. And then yeah, basically I think any mix and match fields like you want to query and order by, you have to create an index for that. So you have to like create it and then wait a few minutes before it runs. That's why I opted for that's why I opted for creating one already ahead of time so that we don't have to wait for a few minutes.
Yes, guys. Yeah, so for next Saturday, guys, it's pretty much this event is in series. So this is what today is day one, which is cooking it up with Firebase. So congratulations everyone for finishing the Firebase Firebase study jam held by our tech department. Let's give a warm applause for our tech department, Jury, Bry, and Lex. Good job, guys, and good job to all of you. So next week, next Saturday, then next Saturday we will be having day two of Breaking Back, which is called Easy as Pie. So it is a Python study jam that focuses on the fundamentals of Python, since I've heard a lot of people that are very interested in learning about Python because they want to get into data analytics, data science, machine learning, or even automation and scripting. So even with web development. So it's really great to start. I think it's a good place to start for with Python. I will be holding it with our Chief Operations Officer. Ian, are you here?
Yes, yes.
Yes, yes. So, me and Ian will be hosting the study jam next Saturday. I hope to see you guys there. More details will be posted on our Facebook page, by the way. At GDSC, that's San Carlos. So be sure to keep an eye out for that event. Also, don't forget to fill out the feedback form sent by Vic in the chat for today's study jam. So, in order to wrap up the event, can you guys turn on your cameras? Let's take a picture to commemorate today's study jam. I hope you guys had a good time because I'm sure I did. Yeah, I see some students from Binild, TUP, NTC, NUL, QCU. It's great to see you guys join in next Saturday also if you guys are interested in Python. We hope to see some of you guys there next week. Vic or Ian, can you facilitate the picture taking?
Ako lang.
Sige, sige.
Sige, guys.
Let's wait for like one more minute, like 9:12 for those who haven't turned on their cameras.
All right.
I'm just really curious, how did you guys know about the event? Let us know along through the chat. We're just really trying to gauge how you guys heard about it. Like, did you see it in the GDSC front page, Facebook, Zach? I definitely did not force you to join, Rojin. Oh, nice. Okay. Sige, sige. Sige, Ian, cue us in lang.
All right, guys. So let's do the normal smile. All right. Everyone say cheese and 3, 2, 1, smile. All right. So I wait. Keep smiling, guys. Smile. All right. So okay. Everyone is always normally
We have
happy, right, guys?
we have a second pose, guys. Don't turn off your cameras yet.
Yeah, guys. Not yet. We have a second pose. It's a GDSC pose. So okay, do this. Okay, guys. 3, 2, 1, smile. Okay, thank you.
Sige. Thank you, guys. I hope you enjoyed today's study jam again. Be sure to join in next week and keep an eye out on our socials. For those from San Carlos, don't worry. We're trying our best to have face-to-face events soon. Hopefully by March, right, Jerry? Hopefully by March. No, B, not my house. We're not gonna fit here. Why do you want to come to my house, guys? Trust me, it's not fun here. Birthday party? Di na yan study jam. Basta, keep an eye out lang, guys. We're trying our best talaga to have face-to-face events. Maybe by March or April. So keep an eye out lang. So for now, hope to see you guys next Saturday. Thank you guys. Have a great night. Bye.
Thanks, guys.